right, welcome back, Modern Symposium. Coming in off of that electric St. Patrick's Day special. Um, lot of news in the broadcasts ever since then. We recorded a little bit beforehand, so by the time it came out, we were a little bit behind on the news. But overall, I had a good discussion with special guest Joe Scott and misinformation specialist Nick Doll11. And we were looking to kind of stay on the politics, stay on the debates this time. So we were thinking maybe we do something creative idea we came up with called Debate Roulette, where we're going to have some debate prompts randomly generated. And we're going to see, me and Nick are going to see if we line up on the same side. If so, we'll skip to the next one and wait till we get one that we line up on opposite sides. But before we start, Nick, any opening statements or words?
Yeah, glad to be here. Glad. I think that St. Patrick's one went pretty well. Had a couple technical difficulties, I believe there. I think there's a good 40 minutes cut off the end of that one that our hardcore fans didn't get to witness. That was a little trivia we were playing, which got interesting towards the end, but I think didn't make the final cut. But yeah, glad to be back. Glad to try something new. I think it's going to be pretty fun. We were messing around a little bit in the pre-show with it, and this guy seems like he's gonna surface up good.
This guy, he knows what he's doing. And yeah, we do have a bit of a blooper reel on that St. Patrick's Day special, so maybe we release that as like a behind the scenes thing. But anyway, let's
Bonus
get started.
content for the.
Yeah, exactly. Behind the paywall. All right, let's get started with first debate prompt. So we said to stay on topics that we normally talk about: politics, technology, culture, society, philosophy. And so it's ready to go. It's going to generate debate prompts, and it's going to keep giving us more and more until we get to one that we disagree on. So with that being said, let's start with the first one. All right, we're ready. Can you generate the first debate prompt?
Sure. First prompt. Should governments implement universal basic income? What's your stance?
Hard hitter to start there. Richie, you'll start us off in a well-positioned area, and then I'll give my stance.
My take on UBI is that it depends. So if we're talking about right now, I don't think so.
That's literally what I was gonna say. Is as of right now, I don't think we need it. In the future potentially. That being said, like I was kind of thinking it goes a little hand in hand with like minimum wage though, because I do personally think minimum wage should be raised from what it is, or maybe supplemented with UBI, some sort of deal. As of right now, I don't think UBI is essential. I think raising a minimum wage is though.
I mean, I just don't really understand how UBI would really work in practice. I mean, I could see it in the future if like artificial intelligence is doing everything and like 90% of people don't have jobs, don't have any assets, have no way of making money.
Right.
But in the near future and current times, I just don't see, I guess I don't see how it could be sustainable. Like, so people, I guess UBI, I guess we should define UBI. So my understanding of UBI is basically that everyone gets a monthly or periodic paycheck, regardless of your current financial status. So like whether you're poor, middle class, rich, everyone's getting like basically the opposite of a flat tax. They're getting a flat stimulus. Is that the right way to think about it or no?
Yeah, I believe. I don't know honestly if there's like a cutoff. If it's like, all right, if you're in like the top 90th percentile of earners, like you're not getting the UBI. Like maybe that's how it works. I'm actually not sure about that. But essentially, yeah, I think it's just kind of like a monthly stipend from the government is how I would think of it.
I mean, I could see it even possibly maybe like a temporary UBI during an economic downturn to stimulate the economy, kind of like they did in COVID.
That's what stimulus checks were, right?
Yeah, right, and that kind of makes sense to stimulate the economy, but I just don't. So okay, so where is this money coming from? Is it just the money printer? We're just gonna be printing off, giving paychecks to people constantly, or is it redistributive tax? A lot of that type of thing. It depends on. If there's a way to do it, and also I don't know. It's got a lot of. The more I think about it, the more I'm kind of against it because part of it too is just like, all right, why would anyone go to work? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think the idea would be something along the lines of enough money for like bare essentials, I would imagine. At the same time, like if that's the idea behind it, instead of UBI, I would rather have like aid stations, essentially, like places you go in, they got like food, free, like, free simple food, free like water, medicine, maybe things like that. I think that would be like probably a better usage instead of, like everyone just getting like $400 a month, essentially. Like if the idea behind it is for, people in the worst position, what that money should be getting put towards basic essentials, you can kind of just set that up.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't think that the UBI would really work that well in practice too, because if everyone just has an extra $400 in their pocket, then the prices of goods are just going to go. It's all relative to the money in the system. Plus, now you've got the government. You've got a. I feel like that's a recipe for disaster because you then create an entire class of people who are dependent on just government. Basically, they're just the government's babysitting them. The government's their sugar daddy. I mean, at that point, it's like no, I can't really see a good. I feel like that's the downfall. That's how we end up in like a Wall-E type world where everyone is just fat and lazy and no one knows how to do anything because
Yeah.
they're just handing you money for nothing.
Because we both said at the very beginning of this question, the one way we both see it as like could be very essential is, maybe 100, 200, 300 years down the line, if, innovation keeps exceeding exponentially and, like people don't really have to like labor that much anymore.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and then it would just be. I mean, at that point, I feel like that's so. At that point, we're kind of in a whole like there is no real like the economy is a fundamentally different thing at that point where we're no longer even like producing as humans. We're just kind of like we're just basically just animals, just observing the world around us, kind of. But I did hear an interesting take on UBI from someone in, I think it was in Culture War podcast, and I actually kind of agree with it, which is, there was a lot of people pushing for UBI, and this guy's take was like, okay, fine, I would vote in favor of UBI, but you can voluntarily sign up to accept a periodic government paycheck that would get you the bare necessities and kind of the basics, but in doing so, you would then resign your right to vote. You no longer get to vote because if you're not, the idea being if you were just not if you were just taking and not contributing and that's your long-term plan, no, don't think you have the right to vote. And at first it was kind of a shock value thing, but the more I thought about it, I kind of do agree with it that if you're reliant entirely on UBI as a form of your income, then
What are you doing here?
I mean, why would you get a vote? Say it's one thing if we're in like a futuristic world where it's all AI, but say it's like in the near future where you've got 70% of the population is still working or running businesses or whatever, and then there's 20 to 30% of people who are just kind of collecting the government UBI and living off that. It's like, okay, so everything that the other people are producing, these people are just taking, not producing anything, but then they're going to vote on the system that governs how these other people produce it. It doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah, I mean that's just a futuristic caste society in the making right there.
Yeah, no, I don't like it. Maybe a temporary UBI stimulus. I kind of that I could see situations, but
I don't know, that I would then just again circle back to UBI would essentially, if the idea behind it is to like help out like the least fortunate people, I think like the minimum wage should essentially be that sort of sustainer. So I think I would just go back to raising minimum wage as opposed to being a proponent of UBI first and foremost.
I mean, yeah, I actually probably would agree that raising the minimum wage would be a more efficient way to inflate prices. Like just pumping money into the system one way or another using UBI. It's not providing any real value to anyone. It's like, okay, now you have $400 more, but so does everybody else, and so everything costs a little bit more, and you can now buy the same amount of things. Whereas raising the minimum wage kind of also has that effect, but at least it's not. At least it does have a little bit of a redistributive factor because it's only going to the people who are at the bottom rather than going to everyone.
Right. Maybe. I don't know. I think we should ask what's his name?
I can't remember this guy's name. He has a name.
Get him fired up on the next one.
Hey, what's your name again?
You can call me ChatGPT.
Uh,
What's up?
Yeah.
No, I thought you had a different name. Anyway, can you generate the next debate prompt?
Sure thing. Next prompt. Is artificial intelligence a threat to human employment? What's your take?
Basically, essentially what we were just talking about.
Yeah, so there you go.
But I mean, this one's even more cut and dry. Is it a threat to human employment? In a certain sense, obviously.
Yeah, I guess the question is how on what scale, and also how far away are we talking? Like, yes, at some point on an infinite scale, within the next couple 100 years, AI is going to be doing everything. But the question, there's some people out there saying that's going to be in 5 years or 10 years, whereas like
I
that's
think it always feels closer than it actually is.
true, but also kind of contradictory to that is that like the exponential curve of technology, where like the world
Right.
this I heard this, it kind of blew my mind a little bit, but like if someone were to go into a coma in the year like 500 AD and then wake up from the coma 1,000 years later in the
It's the
year
same world.
1500 AD, it's like not that much different. Yeah, they'd still be able to like communicate and like understand what was going on. There'd be
Well,
a little bit of new
communicate
stuff, but
communicate maybe not actually. Just this is a little slight aside, literally offshoot of what your point is. Apparently, language changes every like 1,000 years or something. So like the fundamental English language, the very beginning of the English language, we would not be able to like talk to those guys. English has been around like about 1,000 years. Like they got like Beowulf and stuff like that. Like it's just like a completely different language. It's like Germanic almost.
okay, true,
But
fair enough.
but 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 the world is the same once you get over like the language barrier.
Right, yeah. I mean, they're in most ways they would be able to function in a society like at some point. They might have to take a little while to adjust, but if someone were to have been
Right.
born
I agree.
in the year 1750, even 1850 probably, and then go into a coma and wake up 150 years later, they would have no. It's like Captain America, and
Right.
it's like what the hell is going on here? You've got screens. We're on we're on FaceTime or whatever it's called, talking 100 miles away. Like it seems so like sci-fi technology to someone who is in the 16th, 17th, 18th century. Whereas if that increase keeps going at the rate that it is, I mean, we might be seeing it quicker than we think. If we're using ChatGPT and AI to build the next AI, it's a singularity like we talked about, where eventually we get to the point where it's straight up.
I mean, there's like the crazy fact that it took us like thousands of years to fly sustainably, but then from the time period of like us inventing flight to us like landing on the moon was something crazy, like less than 100 years or something.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. I guess what do we think the jobs are that are safe, or at least the ones that are the most safe right now? I mean, it seems like cars. It seems like any driving job is going pretty quick. That'd be
Driving
my
jobs
my
should
guess.
should be one of the quickest to go. How many of those like Waymos are out there or whatever? Those like fully autonomous taxis.
So the Waymos, I know that they operate in San Francisco and I believe Scottsdale, and I'm sure there's probably a few other cities. But the problem with Waymo compared to Tesla is that the way they're engineered, whereas like the Waymo cars are designed, they're like their engineers map out certain cities, so they're designed to like drive around in that city, and they're not really capable of leaving. Eventually, the idea is that they'll be able to, map out the entire world and then they can go all over. But the way Tesla's doing it is just way, way faster, which is everyone who gets a Tesla just drives it themselves, and then they're training the Tesla AI to like remember the road. So I don't if I have a Tesla and I'm not using the full self driving, I'm just driving it myself. Every road I'm driving down, all the Tesla sensors are like picking up all the data and feeding it back into like the mainframe, brain network. Whereas now, eventually so many people do that
Mm.
now like the system just memorize. It's basically the input that's coming into Tesla is just coming in at insanely ridiculous rates where they're just going to blow Waymo out of the water. I think that's my prediction at least.
I mean, how long until you think the trucking jobs are basically gone? Like, I can't see it in less than 10 years, personally.
I was going to say about 10. I think 10 is time where I think we'll start seeing them fade out early 2030s, and by end of the late 2030s, where it's pretty much a dead job. I think that'd
What
be
sort of like
my guess.
regulation is that gonna have to bring about? I mean, like law, like from like law standpoint.
That's a good question too, because like if you've got a self-driving car and it hits somebody, who yeah, they might have to rewrite all the rule books. It's like who's responsible, or if you're, because a lot of people are saying that once the self-driving cars are, the widespread common thing, that vast majority of people aren't even going to own cars. Like 99% of people aren't even going to own cars because you wouldn't really need to. It's going to be like
Just like automated taxis, essentially.
yeah, it'll be like most cars will be owned by businesses, and their jobs will just be it'll probably be more affordable for you to just, have an app, basically like Uber, but self-driving. Just have an app, car picks you up, drops you off where you need to be. Like you don't really have any need to own one unless you want to use it as a business. Because think about this, say
Right.
you go to work, right? You could have your car drop you off at work, then go drive around, pick people up all day, and make money on the side while you're at your office or whatever, and then just come pick you up, drop you back off at home, go out, drive all night. It's kind of just like there's no real reason to park it for any long-term reason.
Right. I mean, and then the amount of cars would actually go down then, as you were saying, because the amount of people who would own them, no one would really have to own one. It would just become essentially like completely corporatized at that point.
I mean, there is a cool video that Elon showed about how all of it just showed a transformation of all of like the cities, and how it's going to be, they'll show like say like the United Center or Soldier Field, and most of the land area in that vicinity is all parking lot space.
Yeah.
If there's really no reason for parking lots then anymore, so they can make it a green area or like a park or something that's just better.
Dude, I took like an urban development class in college, and basically, yeah, that this was like kind of the whole idea. It's like the amount of space dedicated towards parking is like so insane that like our entire cities are like devoted around cars. If it was like built differently, like you could get so much more like fit stuff into one area essentially.
Yeah, no, yeah. So there's gonna be it's gonna change really the whole, like, yeah, city planning and urban development, and it's gonna change, all the laws of the road, really. Like, I don't
How
know, it's
long
gonna be crazy
until
shit.
that's a thing? Like that's not like decades out probably.
Yeah, probably. I think in our lifetime, I think it'll be, I think we'll see it, or at least we'll see it happening. I'm guessing, but even on top of that, that's one of the fastest coming revolutionary AI applications. Whereas I bet there's stuff that's coming even quicker that is going to come so quick that like we haven't even seen it yet.
Yeah.
Like we're not even thinking about it yet, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, no one thought of that, and now all of a sudden like an entire industry that we've seen for centuries is now just like obsolete.
Dude, like the tax industry, like that's like the only reason that essentially a lot of these industries can't be changed so easily is just because so many people might be out of work. Like you know
Yeah,
how
it'll
like
screw over the whole economy.
how many people work as like tax accountants?
Yeah,
Like so many. You can't have that many people like out of work.
yeah. I mean, what do you do when that many people go out of work, and it's like the
You,
skill that they've developed their whole life? Yeah, right. Now they're coming back to the UBI thing, but it might be a thing, or some type of like, there would have at that point there has to be free, or at least very affordable, accessible education where you can learn how AI works, or you can learn whatever these new technologies are, whatever the skill and demand is. There's no way that you're going to take
what
this large
like
of a portion of society, send them
what
back
is
to college. It doesn't make any sense.
what
Yeah.
is the skill and demand though?
I
Like
mean, someone's got to
what do we need people for essentially when we start going down like this fucking timeline?
someone's gotta like be able to operate the AI, but
Right.
also that gets into a whole kind of paradox too, which is like, okay, so if no, so say it does take over pretty much all jobs, so then So then what is it even going to do? Like who's buying, who's using it, who's paying to use it, how is it, like a company wouldn't even be able to, an AI company wouldn't even be able to make money if they don't have anyone using it. I guess other AI where there's going to be trading with each, it does, there's like
It's just
no, it's
all
done.
AI at that point, essentially, right?
Yeah, we're no longer participating in the economy. It's just a machine economy that they're trading with themselves, and I mean that's already a real thing that they're working on. The one I think we talked about in the crypto episode, but this cryptocurrency called IOTA it's I don't remember what the A is for, but it's based on the IoT, the Internet of Things,
Internet
and
of
it's
Things.
designed for microtransactions between machines with no human intervention. And like one example they gave about it was that say my self-driving car is in a rush and there's a self-driving car in front of my self-driving car that's they're just going on a to pick up someone from a picnic. I'm driving someone to the hospital. Then in real time I can just send IOTA to this other car that's in front of me to have them, but it's like micropayment, so it's like a couple cents,
Right.
but they'll get
To
out of the
move out of the
way.
way.
Yeah, that's just so insane.
Right, because at a certain point, if it's machines doing literally everything for us, like what is it doing? Like what are we doing more so?
Yeah, I mean, do we just become we're just and with the animals? We'll just be in the zoos. The machines will just be looking at us, throwing
Or
bananas
like
at us and shit.
secondary citizens, essentially?
Yeah,
Possibly.
we might just be like useless eaters. Is I've heard that
Yeah.
term thrown around just regarding the human race. Is just useless eaters. All right, should we pull up another one?
Yeah, that's about as far down that one goes.
All right, can we get another debate prompt, please? You got you gotta say please and thank you to these things because they're gonna take
You
over.
have to, because I mean, otherwise we'll be in the bad zoos next time.
No worries.
Yep.
All right, next one. Is climate change the most pressing issue of our time? What's your stance?
I'm gonna go hard no. I think not the most. The question was, is it the most? I'm not gonna say it's
Yeah,
the most.
no,
I'm gonna say it's not
it's
the
not
most.
it's not the most. It's still got to be like interglobal like power struggles between ourselves probably over the climate changing to kill us.
I mean, we can go into climate change a little bit. I don't think we've ever really debated that one because I'm I'm not like a climate change is a hoax guy, but I am like climate change is over exaggerated and used for opportunistic purposes. That's kind of my opinion on it. Whereas I mean, the science isn't in 100%, and it does seem like there is potential problems if we don't do something in the long run. But I don't. I mean, you definitely you're more well read on this than I am too. I don't really have too much expertise on it, but
Yeah, I mean, one of the main things with climate change, it's not even like our climate's changing so fast. It's like just our own terrible like practices within the climate. So like agriculture, for example, like this was on like the Healing Roots episode, like what we talked about, right? Essentially
sponsored
like
Healing Roots. It's
sponsored
about
Healing
healing
Roots.
roots, mending the relationship between humans and Mother Nature. Go check out healingroots.org.
Beautiful. Yeah, essentially it's like we are having just these terrible practices, stripping, vital things that we need in our soil out of it with bad practices. You know, people always say like there's like rising sea tides. Like, all right, that's not going to kill us like within the next decade or two, right? The thing that's going to kill us in the next decade or two is going to be, people once again playing, the global game of domination, risk. I think that's a much more pressing issue.
Yeah, no, I agree. I do have two kind of interesting points on climate change. Not really. One's a theory that I came up with that I have no evidence to back, but it sounds like it's reasonable, which is that because there's all this kind of media narrative push that's against fossil fuels and oil and all that, right? And I always try to kind of look at where the money's going. It's like there's always some financial incentives when it comes to these big like super PACs, and it's like who's really backing this? We already know that. I'm sure there's some, but we know that most politicians are not like going out of their way to try to do the right thing for the earth. They're probably got their special interest groups and all this. So thinking about it, and one of the biggest special interest groups is APAC. You know APAC?
Yeah, that's the Israel lobby, right?
Yeah, the Israel lobby. And I was thinking about it, and it does make a lot of sense that Israel would want to push the narrative to get people to stop, to be like anti-oil and anti-fossil fuels.
Just to take away the power of the Arab countries around them.
Yeah, then we have no incentive to like try to maintain any, like they can just roll right through everyone else in the Middle East, and we would have no financial reason to stop that. And so that seems like it could be. It seems like they have a good reason that they would be interested in getting people to stop using oil. But anyway, that's just kind of a random guess that I came
I
up.
mean,
But
renewable resources, like that can't be like a bad investment long term for us, though.
no, yeah, I mean, I think eventually that's one of my main reasons why I don't really harp too much on climate change is because I think that eventually we are at the point where the renewable resources will just be better. Like they'll just have a not a it's what's the economic term? It's not a comparable advantage, but it's like or an absolute advantage. Whereas like
Uh,
not all they're going to be less expensive. They're going to be better, more efficient. It's like there's going to be no
nearly,
reason to use it.
nearly infinite. Like,
Yeah, solar power is already getting pretty close when it comes
yeah.
to like the cost efficiency and everything. And I mean, I can see it going there. Other interesting point on climate change. So Trump's talking about taking Greenland, right?
Hmm.
Thought it was kind of just like him, joking around for the meme of it. But and I can't remember. We might have already talked about this at one point. But have we talked about the motive for going after Greenland right now?
I don't know if we have. The two things I've seen is one, we might want it for like its military based strategic locations, that puts us literally right in the heart of mainland Europe. And then two is like there could be so many minerals under there as if the like ice keeps melting or whatever.
So the first one, so yeah, the minerals, I've heard that one, and then the first one is also what I was going for, but the reason why is pretty interesting, and I never really put two and two together. But for a while, like after the Cold War, we already had military bases in Greenland and all around that area.
We have military bases all over the world.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's that is the U.S. hegemony right there.
But we pulled out a lot from Greenland and from that area because it wasn't that much use to us. It's up near Russia, and Russia has a lot of bases there. China's been coming in and moving a bunch of bases there, and so we're kind of like, we got to get back up there. The reason why being is because I saw this cool article about it that showed like a graph, and it showed over the years where the ice would be in the summer and winter, and obviously because of global warming, it's getting a little bit smaller. And what's happening is a trade route is opening up that goes right through
Mm.
Greenland, and it's like and it cuts the travel time from like Russia to the United States or to Canada at least, and like it's like less than half once this thing is opened up, and it's in the process of opening up just because of global warming. And so now rather than doing anything about global warming, all of the superpowers are saying like, oh, we better put some military bases there so that we can take advantage of this new trade route.
Have you heard about like Antarctica and like that sort of aspect?
No, not really. I don't think.
So who owns Antarctica?
I know that isn't no one allowed to go there, like no
So
civilian.
like technically like no one owns Antarctica. And then we signed this like peace deal at the time with like whoever the other global powers were, where it's like, all right, we all kind of own it. And then they like divvied it up into like strips essentially. So like, all right, no one can like build anything, but if you do build something, you can only build it on your strip. So we've like kind of chopped it up, but it's also kind of like a free for all.
Yeah, no, I never really looked into Antarctica. I wonder what like not that I would want to go there. I don't know if anyone's wanting to go there and not being able to, but I did see that you're not allowed to go there if you wanted to, and I wonder why that is. I wonder what they're hiding down there.
I mean, there's the things on the internet that they're hiding like hidden pyramids and stuff in the ice.
Yeah, it could be.
That's like where we get all of our secret technology from.
Definitely something sus going on on the poles, the North Pole, Antarctica. No one wants to go there anyway. It's all ice. But all right, let's hit the next one. All right, next debate prompt, please.
Got it. Next prompt. Should we prioritize space exploration over solving Earth's problems?
That's
All right.
that's a pretty good one, actually.
It's a good question.
I never really thought about that much. I know that the idea with, I mean, it depends what we mean by space exploration. Like, I know that SpaceX, their fundamental goal is to occupy Mars, and the idea being that it would help humanity survive longer in the case that Earth did fail to be sustainable. So it seems it's a good like escape pod. But then yeah, I mean space exploration in general does I mean I don't want to say it seems pointless because it's definitely not pointless, but it does kind of seem like not a priority.
Yeah, I mean, the question it asked was, should we prioritize space exploration over Earth's problems? And I'd say that's probably a pretty easy no at this point. I would prioritize Earth's problems over exploring space. I
I
mean,
guess it
it's,
depends more specifically. Hang on, let me get a follow. It depends what do we mean by Earth's problems. Can we ask a follow-up for that last debate prompt? Can you be more specific when you refer to Earth's problems? Can you give a specific problem or group of problems?
Sure. For example, should we prioritize addressing issues like poverty, climate change, or global health crises over space exploration?
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, again, I'd say, yeah, probably, but
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to really give a good uh, logical answer as to why we need to be like studying some black hole like 12 galaxies away rather than solving problems like that. I mean, I'm a pretty big I'm pretty much sold on the idea that poverty is really not it's 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 not a solvable problem really. I mean, there's no real way to poverty is relative. So like even if we lifted everyone out of what is currently considered poverty, there would still it would just be considered poverty to only have a one bedroom house instead of a mansion. You know, if everyone had mansions except for the lowest 1%, they all just had little apartments, then that would be considered. There's no real such thing as like there's no like hard line poverty. I don't think because I think
yeah,
you know or guys.
my answer to the question would be like, I would want to solve Earth's problems first, then we can start exploring space once we figured stuff out here. You know, like as you're talking about like poverty, I'd say like getting people out of like despotism is a good goal. You know, like I could definitely foresee like a sort of UBI in the future being like bread and fish. You know, like there's enough bread and fish to go around for everyone. You get free bread and fish, you know, like maybe we build like huge government high rises, right? Where like you get like your own like little room essentially, and like you so everyone has like food and shelter, and then it's like all right, that's like your UBI essentially, right?
Yeah, yeah, I guess yeah.
And
You
like
just
that's the
skip over the
baseline of
money,
poverty. Yeah, skip over money. Like
take the
the
middleman
baseline,
out, go straight to the goods. Yeah,
right? It's like you have a place to sleep and you have like enough like food and water, right? Like that would be like lifting like the global population out of poverty in my eyes. And then it
but
would be like from there on, it's
don't you
on
think
you.
once we
And
get
then
there though?
education, I guess. I don't. There's so much to do. That's the issue.
Yeah, I agree with education should for sure be one of the number one things to focus on. But okay, so in your example, everyone has like a studio apartment and like a big high rise, bread and water or whatever, basics, clothes, bed, and that's the new UBI. In that, say that 50 years from now, that's what's going on.
Mm.
Don't you think then 50 years from now there will be an entire group of people in
Bread and
America
fish isn't enough.
we're saying that is yeah,
Yeah,
bread and fish is not a living wage. This is
yeah,
bullshit that some people have mansions and these people are living in poverty in this little studio apartment with all they have is a bed and food. That's what I mean is that it is all relative at the end of the day.
right.
Like even people now in the United States who are technically considered living in poverty, but it's like relative to the United States when really the world's poverty scale is like they're way they're so far above it.
Yeah,
But I guess with the space exploration, the only thing I could see
sure. That's the
yeah, it kind of got out there, but the only thing I could see that it actually might be useful for where it like might want to remain a priority is, well, I guess a couple things. One being like minerals. like valuable resources that might be found in space, and the other one being, or like, any type of scientific discovery that can maybe help in bettering our life here on Earth. Maybe that's discovered in space. I don't think that's too far fetched. I think that's one of the main motives for going. And then the other one is just like security purposes, where if the United States just stops all space travel and space exploration, but Russia and China keep doing it, or say another world power blows up, South Korea or something like that, and then they just own space. It's like, all right, that's the next frontier of, they're the new empire. They're the British Empire owned the seas in the 1500s. Whatever nation owns the space in the next couple hundred years is probably going to be the big empire.
And then this question essentially comes back to globalism versus nationalism again, like kind of what you were just saying, right? Like, is this question viewed through the lens of like, all right, should the United States be doing space exploration, or should humanity, like as a whole, be like trying to collectively reach for the stars, right? That's kind of like what we were talking about UBI as well. Like, poverty level in America is much different than poverty level in other places. Like would one standard of living have to be implanted for like everyone throughout the world, sort of deal?
Yeah, and that is one reason, and I know that we've had pretty detailed discussions on this, but that is just my main reason for getting frustrated sometimes with the argument of like how the billionaires are, the like billionaires are being portrayed as if they're just like stepping on the throats of the poor people and stealing their money, when realistically it's like the country that has the richest people at the top also has the richest people at the bottom, because even though it's disproportionate, Elon Musk makes 400 billion is 300 billion richer than he was, but him making that 300 billion might have made like the lowest class, extra couple $100 or something like that, where they do kind of bring it, the entire system does get brought up and held up by the top. And so, I mean, it's to be against the inequality is fair enough, but just to say that it's like, oh yeah, the only way these people get rich is by just like stealing it, extracting it from the poor people. I feel like that's just a very like misleading way to look at it, because it's not necessarily the case, or at least it's not always the case, and especially not in like the modern Western world, I don't think.
Yeah, wanna move on to the next one?
All right, let's see what we got. Arbor is his name too, by the way.
Arbor?
Yeah, it popped up. Arbor. They got up here. I could change the guy.
Like
actually.
free?
Ready for another prompt?
I'm changing
It's great to meet you. Hello.
I got
It's
Vale
lovely
now.
to meet you. If there's anything you need, please don't
I like
hesitate.
her better.
Yeah. All right. Hey, Vale. Can we pick up the conversation where I left off with Arbor, and can you please generate another debate prompt?
Hey, sure, let's dive right in. Last time we were exploring the economics and geopolitics of China, right? For our next debate,
No, that might have been a while ago. Last time we were talking about the what
Space
was it again?
exploration.
Yeah, space exploration compared to solving the problems on Earth.
Got it. Space exploration versus solving Earth's problems. For our next debate, how about we focus on whether the resources allocated to space exploration should be...
All right, Vale, you're fired. We're going back to Arbor.
All right, I'll take the stance that space exploration...
Hang on. I see what I gotta do. I gotta go here.
AI assistants aren't what they used to be.
Yeah, these guys think they're gonna take over. Here we go. All right, hey Arbor, can you generate another debate prompt, please?
You got it. Next up, should countries implement stricter regulations on social media to prevent misinformation? What's your take?
That's a great question, Arbor. Arbor's coming in with the hard-hitting journalism here.
The questions have been pretty good. I'm a hard no on that one. I'm very much anti that.
What was the exact question again?
It was, should countries implement stricter regulations on social media to prevent misinformation? That's probably like my number one most hard line issue that I'm very much against. Social media, any government restricting what you can post on social media is no good.
Yeah. So what do you do about misinformation spread? You just like let it happen, essentially?
Well, I mean, I think it's like a kind of a fact of nature. Yeah, I think you let it happen and you combat it with other information or, with counter speech. Whereas like, okay, so but the whole problem with misinformation is who gets to decide what's misinformation? Does the
Right.
mainstream media, does CNN and Fox News and MSNBC get to decide what I think if anything, this is I'm gonna get heated on this one. I like this one. I think
Yeah.
if anything, social media solves the problem of misinformation because what it does is yes, there's going to be misinformation out there. Of course there is, and it's become a meme at this point. Oh yeah, everything on the internet's real, right? Everyone knows that not everything on there is real. But what can happen on social media is brands and reputations can develop where they can become known as a reliable news source, like something like the Daily Wire or the Young Turks or someone like that, who are like YouTube channels, or like Tim Pool or like Joe Rogan, or all these guys who develop good reputations because they have good conversations. They may not always get it right, but they develop the reputation as someone who's trying to get it right. The opposite of that is what we've had prior to social media, which is you've got 3 or 4 mainstream news channels who don't give a shit whether they get it right or not because they're not held accountable by anyone. If there was someone who's trying to run a business as like a news broadcaster, or like what we're doing on Modern Symposium, if we're trying to build our channel up, we can't just be coming on here and lying all the time because the comments are going to be saying no, this guy's wrong. Eventually, it's going to come out. People are going to catch on. Our reputation gets slandered. Whereas like CNN lies all the time. Fox News has lied many times, and they. I don't think that the mainstream media has any ethical standards at all when it comes to their journalism. So it's like to just say like, oh yeah, social media misinformation. I think it's just it's such like a hypocritical like
Yeah.
nonsense statement.
Yes. So I have two kind of things here. So the one I would say that Europe, I don't know which countries in particular, but I've been seeing things like there's actually have written laws wherein you can be held accountable for like what you post on the internet if that like causes someone anxiety, something like that, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if you post something like, I don't know, like climate change isn't real, like those dolphins aren't actually dying, like blah blah blah, like if that like actually like essentially like, triggers someone hard enough, you can like get some kind of like, I don't know, like penalty or fine. Maybe it's like a short stint in like jail possibly. So in like that aspect, like I'm obviously definitely against the government like coming in and saying like, oh, you can't talk about this particular issue in that way. In that aspect, I totally agree. Like should be able to essentially post whatever you want. On the front of like curtailing misinformation, I think that's a little bit different, possibly. Just like if someone is a known like misinformation distributor, though, do you think they should like still be allowed to?
I mean, I don't think that there should be a centralized source given the ability to not let them post.
Yeah,
So like in on X now they've got the community notes. I think that's a pretty good, not a solution, but a good a good feature that helps with that issue. Whereas like if you have like verified accounts, it's kind of almost like it's a bit of a social credit score. Whereas like you got to have some type of verification or like some type of credibility, and you can go into the community notes, and it's mostly just like it's kind of whatever the most people are saying that have the most credible reputations. They can kind of they can like almost correct the post where there's a note that pops up under the tweet that will say like community knows, like this actually wasn't true, this was edited by AI or something like that.
who does the community posts? Is it like anyone that has like a verified account or something?
Yeah, there's like a lot of things that it has to be verified. Here, I don't want to spread any misinformation. Let's ask the overlords. On X, how do the community notes work? Who's posting these community notes that are correcting tweets, and how do they get verified to do that?
Community notes on X, formerly known as Twitter, are written by users who are part of the Community Notes program. These users can add context to potentially misleading posts. Notes are rated by other contributors for helpfulness. If a note is rated as helpful by users from diverse perspectives, it gets shown publicly. The process helps ensure notes are balanced and accurate.
Yeah, I kind of like that. I mean, it's not a perfect solution by any means, but it's something. It's like it's a step in the right direction. But also, okay, so I'll put it this way though. So if someone can go around spreading misinformation, I guess it's a trade-off. Would we rather have people spreading misinformation and then, it's just up to everyone to decide who it is that they trust and what it is that they believe? Or is it better to give the government or some type of entity the power to declare something as misinformation? Because look at, I could probably rattle off 4 or 5 off the top of my head, things that were labeled misinformation, banned from Twitter, and then they turned out to be true, you know?
Yeah, right. In this misinformation age, though, it's not so much like one account is saying like something about COVID, like I had some crazy conspiracy theory about COVID, right? It's the fact that they'll have like 30,000 bots, like all posting these same things, like across different accounts, different comments, different areas. I guess that's like the issue is that it's not like one stop shop for here's the source of the misinformation, essentially.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's true. I mean, it's got to be. I don't know. I'm sure there's like community notes is one step. I
But
mean,
again,
I'm acknowledging there is a problem, like where that, yeah, it could be done, and like you've got people who are just, it's literally an information war where you've got large entities with a bunch of bots battling to control the truth, but also it's like, okay, is the government not also just a player on that battlefield who's saying like, oh
right,
yeah,
right.
don't let those guys lie to you. Give the power to me so I can lie to you. Because I mean, look at um like the Hunter Biden laptop in the last election. That's one. I mean, there's been a shit ton. There was a bunch of shit during COVID where people were
I
getting
mean,
banned for misinformation. It turned out to be correct. Like there's a
I
ton
mean,
of it.
even I think the biggest COVID one that I've seen, at least, is just the fact that like it came from the Wuhan facility or whatever. Like early on, it was like a racist thing to say like, oh, like this might have been a lab leak out of the Wuhan coronavirus facility, right?
Yeah,
If you toted that line, it's like, oh, you're a misinformation spreader, you're a racist, whatever. And then it's like, oh, actually, it did come out of that facility.
exactly. Yeah. Now it's like highly likely that it came out, and it's pretty much like everyone agrees that that's probably what happened. And there was something else during COVID too. It was like, oh, it was something with Joe Rogan where they were like, they were all on CNN trying to like discredit Joe Rogan and saying that he's spreading misinformation. And then it turned out like it was something with the ivermectin. I can't remember the exact story. And they were saying like, oh yeah, it's horse medicine. It's like horse dewormer. This guy's an idiot. He's telling all his followers to go take horse medicine. And then it was like Joe Rogan brought the CNN doctor onto his show who said that on CNN and was like, why are you telling people this is horse medicine? I got this from my doctor. I'm prescribed. Like, aren't I prescribed? And the CNN guy, Sanjay Gupta, is sitting there and he's like, no, it's people medicine. I know. I was like, well, why'd you say that? Well, because it's just it's a news program, and like he just had them, and it's like, all right, like I'm yet to see. I think if a good
I mean,
firm
so
look at human history will always kind of trend towards the idea of centralizing the sources of truth and who gets to decide what's true and what's not, like officially. Whereas it's free speech. I mean, it's why it's number
yeah,
one.
right, right. I mean, in theory, the better practice is probably allow misinformation to be spread, allow like essentially allow you to say whatever you want, have the court of, like public opinion win out the day in the end, rather than, letting one group decide
Yeah, right,
what
and
the
like
actual line is. So,
it's got to be a
yeah.
little bit of responsibility on the people too who are reading information. Now, obviously, we're a country full of not the smartest people, so it's like, and like we said on the last podcast, it's not even really about being smart. Sometimes they get me. Sometimes I'll see something that looks, it's like I thought it was true, and then it turns out it's fake. They get everyone, but it's like if I would say that if the government is allowed to determine on a social media platform something is misinformation and ban it from the platform, I don't think we have a democracy. I feel like that's the Chinese kind of state where you're not allowed to criticize the government. If you do so, you get sanctioned, thrown in jail, whatever it is. That's how the old Soviet Union was. Whereas like those are not democracies. The foundation of democracy is the ability to speak freely about the government. If the government can control what you're allowed to say about them, then all of a sudden a couple corrupt officials get in. You're not allowed to say anything bad about them. Now, how do we have a democracy? How are people going to vote when they're not allowed to share negative information about the person running?
Right. Yeah, I'd agree. I think we reached a consensus there.
Yeah, that one I'm passionate about that one. All right, should we run one or two more?
Yeah,
All right. So we got these questions have been good. They're
are
getting
really
pretty
good.
good. All right, can we get another debate prompt, please?
Thanks. Next prompt. Should public transportation be free for all citizens? What's your take?
I mean, you want to go? You want to start that one?
I mean, I guess I don't see like why not. Again, it starts stemming from where does the money come from? Do we have the money for it? Essentially,
Yeah,
yeah. So
it's always like, yeah, should it be free? Like, yeah, let's make it
yeah,
free. But
that
it's like,
right.
can't just make it free. It's got to come from somewhere. So, I mean,
I mean,
I'm sure there's better
are,
ways to generate the money than, I mean, I don't know. I've never really had too much of a problem with, I don't think public transportation is like what's breaking the bank for people. You know, it's like $3 or three.
yeah, I would rather have like better public transportation than
Yeah,
like
yeah,
free public transportation, right?
yeah. I would pay more if they could make it
right,
better.
like I would like dude, like high speed rail. I would pay $40 to travel from like DC to Chicago in like 2.5 hours. That seems perfectly reasonable to me.
Yeah, no, yeah, I agree. All right, that question, not that great. All right, let's get another debate prompt, please.
All right, next up. Should there be a global tax on wealth? What's your stance?
You hear him?
I heard the man.
Global tax on wealth. You already
But
know. You
there
already say
already is
I'm saying no.
there already is a tax on wealth. You get taxed whenever you make wealth. That should wealthy people pay more in taxes is then I guess essentially what the question boils down to.
I think it's well. Hang on, that's a good point. I was looking at it differently. I was thinking of it as like a wealth tax, like not on income, but like on. Let's ask him to clarify. When you say a tax on wealth, we're talking about like a wealth tax on assets or capital that someone already owns, rather than the income that they're generating, right?
Exactly. A wealth tax typically targets the total value of assets someone owns, like property, stocks, and other investments, rather than their annual income.
So that was Kamala's thing about taxing unrealized capital gains is the wealth tax.
right. I mean, I would just have to defer back to I'd rather tax things more rather than taxing unrealized gains.
I mean, yeah, that's we actually had a good debate. That was one of our first
Yeah,
episodes. Everyone go back and check
we've
out
hashed
that
this
one.
out.
That was a good one. But yeah, no, same as I had last time, where you can't tax unrealized gains because they haven't gained anything because it's unrealized and it doesn't make any sense. But
I don't. Again, just to clarify old points, I would like to see some form of loopholes closed in these aspects where you can like hide wealth in overseas accounts, where you can borrow against wealth that you haven't yet realized. Like
yeah, I agree with that.
I don't really get how that's like allowed. It's like, oh, like I'm worth $300 billion, but not really because I don't like actually own it, but I can borrow $100 million against it essentially for free. So
Yeah.
I don't really know how that would work. Maybe you'd have to sell off like whatever portion you want to borrow against, maybe.
Well, so I don't necessarily agree on the borrowing part, but I do agree on like some of the loopholes where like yeah, like hiding money overseas, or I mean, I'm sure there's like ways to do it. There's like you could set up these trusts and get out of stuff like that. But the borrowing one, it's like that. I'm just I don't see I don't really see a problem with the borrowing. I think we actually need the borrowing kind of because if it weren't for the borrowing. I mean, most of the money in circulation is not real money. It's just credits. It's just money made out of thin air.
Yeah.
Most of the money is just loans. And so it's like we can't. It's just that's. I don't know if we can really get. I don't know what we can do about that, or like I don't really think it's that much of a problem either. I don't think the ability to borrow against what you own. It's like actually a good thing because then it's like okay, if you don't end up, you're not at risk of like disintegrating a bunch of money like some of these banks do when they loan money they don't have. Whereas like if you're allowed to borrow money against something you own as collateral, if you can't pay it back, they could take your thing, and it's not like there's money that's just erased.
Or again, I'd once again circle back to a consumption tax, right? It's like, all right, you want to buy a yacht. All right, that's fine. You got to pay 100% taxes on this yacht because it's a fucking yacht, you know?
Yeah. No, I mean that. Then you're just putting the yacht companies, and that's just a tariff on the yachts, though. That. Well, yeah. Then
Yeah.
you're just making it harder for the yacht companies to say, the guys making the yachts are just getting a regular job. They're trying to build some yachts. They got a guy willing to pay $100 million, but now he's got to pay $200 million, and he's like, all right, well, I'm not going to do that, and now they're all out of a job. They would have taken it for $100. Why's he got to pay $200? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
I'm just
It's a
I
good,
mean,
good point.
I'm an anti-government interventionist when it comes to like trying to fuck with the free market, where it's like you got two people who are willing to make a trade, and then a third guy comes in and starts saying, no, 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 you got to pay him more. And it's like, but both of the two people were saying like we both wanted to do it for this, and now this third guy's just coming in and botching the deal.
Mm. Get that. Another one?
All right, yep. All right, can we get another debate prompt?
Sure. Next prompt. Should voting be mandatory in all democratic countries? What's your take?
I do not think so at all. Should
Pretty
voting
good
be
question.
mandatory? I don't think. I mean, I never heard that one before. That's a good one. I would say no. I kind of don't. I think like if you don't, I'm almost a little bit the opposite. Where I think it should be like I almost don't think you should get the right to vote just from like being born in the country. Like I feel like you should have to have. I feel like you should have to pay taxes to vote,
Yeah, maybe.
or at least have like some. There should be something like you have to uh, contribute somehow. Like and I'm almost a little bit like the opposite. I definitely don't think it should be mandatory, and I encourage people who don't know what the hell they're talking about and who have never, don't understand anything about politics and have no interest, and they're just, the get out to vote effort just sucked you in and told you to vote for their guy. I would say don't vote because you don't know what you're voting for, and for all you know, you're just voting for something that's against your own interest.
What would you think about some sort of like proficiency test?
Just like to prove that you like know what you're talking about, like you understand what you're voting for.
Yeah, a little. Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of how like government and like society functions a little bit.
Yeah, well, I know that one is um I know that one is like a controversial one because it was I think was it Jim Crow or before that where they would do that as like a way it was like a kind of like a racial thing where they were trying to get it was after the end of slavery and everything. There was a time where they started putting out these type of tests because it was like
Mm-hmm.
a kind of a voter suppression. And so I mean that's one I think that's a reason why that is like you don't want to be really associate. You don't want to be the politician who's saying like, yeah, let's go back to doing that. But I don't think it's, for one, I don't think it is racist in this day and age. And I mean, I also think it would be probably helpful if the people voting knew what they're voting for, at least, at least the basics.
Yeah, I mean, mandatory, I'd say like probably definitely not. I feel like it's almost your free right not to choose, essentially. Like, why are you being forced to pick one of these, essentially always two options? I would say you shouldn't be forced to have to pick between one of them. It's sort of a should everyone be allowed to vote question. I'd say, yeah, you'd like to see some form of, like proficiency about people knowing about what they're talking about, at least in some aspect. To your other point about if you pay taxes, you're allowed to vote. If you like contribute something into the system, then you're actually allowed to get a vote into the system. I could see that working in a certain aspect.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm saying that kind of like in theory as well, and like philosophically, but I do understand that in practice, there's definitely a lot of downsides to that I haven't considered. Like you don't
I
want
mean,
to
yeah,
have it where someone's down on their luck temporarily and now they lose their right to vote because they didn't pay taxes this year and they don't have an income. Or it's like, all
right.
right, there'd have to be a real, I don't think it's necessary to do that. I think it wouldn't be my number one concern to say like, yeah, we got to get these people to stop voting. It's like, if you want to vote, you should be able to vote, but I don't think it should be mandatory.
Yeah, I agree. All right, one more maybe.
Yep.
Try and get, one more good one maybe.
All right, can we get one more debate prompt?
You got it. Next prompt. Should countries adopt a 4-day work week? What's your take?
We've talked about this one too. That's
Have we
if
talked
they
about this one?
can. I think we did. It was like it might have been the first. It might have been our first episode. We talked about the 4-day work week, but I think I guess it's kind of a bad question too because it's like it's not the country. It's not up to the country, you know. Like if a
Yeah, I
business
mean,
wants to do that, then
it,
yeah, then go ahead. But
yeah, right. It's also it's just kind of one of those things. It's like, well, what if you want to work like 6 5-hour shifts instead of like 4 10-hour shifts?
yeah, right. It should just
It's
be
kind of personal preference a little bit, and same thing
exactly.
like a company. It's like say you're like a tax company or something, or like a payroll company, right? So like your Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays are like really busy because you're like getting like payroll ready for like the following weekend or whatever. Then Thursdays and Fridays you kind of have a lighter load. It would make sense for those companies to be like, all right, yeah, like if your work's done by like Thursday or whatever, like take Friday off, But like it's kind of just dependent, company to company, I would say.
Yeah, right. It's literally just it's like a deal between. It's like yeah,
Again,
you're working for a
deal
company, you
between
just deal between two people. Yeah.
deal between two people sort of deal.
All right, we gotta go now on that one was
Yeah.
sweet. All right, this is the last debate prompt we're gonna ask for. So can you make it really like you know really intellectual, really philosophical, having a lot to do with like current times, super controversial. We want to make this thing. We want.
All right, here we go. Is the pursuit of technological advancement worth potential ethical compromises? What's your take?
Should we go?
Circles back to the very beginning a little bit.
Hang on, quiet, Arbor. I feel like that's the same as the one we already did. Come on, Arbor, give me something good here. I want to get a good. I want to get a good like a good fresh one. All
I
right.
mean,
Sorry, yeah, I got it.
I was just gonna say like that one's just a little bit different. Like that's kind of the philosophy behind what we were saying at the beginning. Is like if this happens, then we might need UBI. But like, should we be trying to progress to like that sort of state essentially, where like machines kind of do most of the grunt labor, and then humans are supposed to then decide what sort of meaning they want to contribute like to life on their own? Is that what
So
we should be gunning for?
yeah, and actually it is kind of because when I was thinking ethical concerns, I didn't even really think about that one either. I was also I guess because now that you mention it, it's like yeah, and the more I'm thinking about it, there's kind of a lot of ethical concerns because I wasn't even thinking that. I was thinking more like AI, the ethics of AI being whereas like these AI algorithms are just taking your data and using it to kind of manipulate you. Like I know there's been a lot of cases with Facebook where like all of these, I think a lot in the Middle East and other countries, and probably a few here, where these like extremist groups would get together on Facebook because the algorithms all kind of like guided them towards this like violent extreme
Mm-hmm.
ideology, and it's like as the AI gets better, it's going to be able to basically control us through these through these like basically just pretty much the same thing, just algorithms and like stimulation and like sensationalism and just gonna know how to hack your brain basically. So that I guess that's another one.
I mean, so would you be a proponent for pulling the plug on AI right now? Like, I probably
I
would say
don't.
no.
I just don't think that's even. I don't even think that we could if we wanted to. Almost at this point.
If you had the power, essentially, like this is just like a huge hypothetical. Like, I don't know, you have your hand on like the hand on the
Like
button,
wish it
like
was never like go back in time so
destroy.
it was never even like it's not even possible to make. I mean, kind of, yeah, I think so because I do feel like it kind of sucks. I get this feeling sometimes that it kind of sucks because like when we were growing up, it was always it was like a competition somewhat of like, you know, we want to try to learn the most stuff so that we can be, like the most, what's the word? Like the most adequate performers for certain roles. We would have the most insight on whatever it is that my field of study was. Whereas like, there'd be people and there still kind of is, but they're disappearing now where there'd be people who's like, yeah, like this guy is the best doctor of all time. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, he's like a hero, it's like, oh yeah. And like as
Forefront
kids, I
like
feel like
biologist, like he like
yeah,
cracked the
yeah.
human genome, right?
But or like yeah, and I feel like kids kind of strive to that before real life kind of hits them, and 99.999% of them don't end up becoming the best of all time to do this one thing. But for them, like when I feel like kids' motivation is built on that idea of like, oh, I'm interested in this and I want to be like the best at this. And now I feel like you see a lot of like mental health issues and kind of a decline in education and like the new generations just kind of being like the don't give a fuck generation. I wonder if that has part to do with it, where it's like you can be the smartest person, the most hardworking person, the most dedicated person to ever live, but AI is a billion times better than you at whatever it is that you're going to try to do. So it doesn't really matter anyway. You could if you spent the last 100 years trying to memorize the entire encyclopedia, and then ChatGPT came out 2 years ago, and now it's like I could probably have a debate with you with ChatGPT pulled up, and we would be able to at least hang in the same realm, just because
Right.
ChatGPT is basically just taking all the work from what you did and giving it to everyone who didn't do the work.
Right. It's like I saw something. It's like kids these days like are just like on their phones or whatever, right? Like 40, 50, 60 years ago, kids would be in their backyard identifying every sort of like bug that they see in their backyard, right? Now it's like someone who has a smartphone will know every single type of bug like that's in existence, right? It's kind of like mental gridlock that you were kind of talking about, the fact that like how am I literally supposed to like kind of accomplish anything when like everything's already like in the palm of my hand.
Yeah, I could see like nihilism and just like the idea that nothing matters anymore becoming more and more prominent because of this. But also, I will say though, because it always seems every technology always seems like it's like the internet. Everyone kind of said the same thing. It's like, oh yeah, we don't know what we're gonna do now because there's computers. But it's like, but look at what some people use computers to do. Like people use computers to do like super creative and super helpful and useful things. And that maybe that is with AI too. Maybe it ends up being like more of a platform for people to
Mm-hmm.
like someone, rather than spending all your time learning how to code, you don't have to do that anymore because now there's like a platform where you can use this. It's basically just a translator translating the code from the computer into English and then back. And so maybe now I can just code without knowing how to code, and maybe I can come up with a cool idea that no one ever thought of. So there might still be that. There might still be that. But
Mm-hmm.
I think it's moving quick where like 5 years from now it's like that'll be outdated. There'll be something new.
I mean, and then at that point, like what does human society become? Is it like totally like depend on the arts essentially? Like if we don't need accountants, we don't need truck drivers, we don't need engineers, right? Like what do we then focus our time on?
So
Like
have you seen The Matrix? I assume, right?
of course, yeah.
I feel like that's where we're going. We're no longer we're just like pod. We're just like laying in a pod, and they're just plugged into our brain, and they're just taking data and using it for energy. And it's just I could see it getting like I feel like we're so close to that
Like we
already.
basically just put ourselves in like a augmented reality every day.
Yeah, I feel like I think that's going to happen. Maybe again, probably late in our lifetimes, maybe not even in our lifetimes, but I think it's going to start with the goggles. They've got these VR goggles, these AR goggles, that Apple Vision Pro thing, and it looks bulky and goofy, and it costs $5,000, and so it's like didn't catch on. Okay, fine, but that's the first one, and as we know about Apple, they keep coming out with new generations of their products every year, and they keep getting better, and they keep using the people's data. So like the people who bought the first Apple Vision Pro, that Apple Vision Pro wasn't supposed to be good. It was supposed to be something they can get out there so that people would put it on so that they can collect their data and use that data to make the next one better. And
Mm-hmm.
so I feel like eventually they're going to be like just like the glasses you're wearing now, have all these insane capabilities. Eventually, maybe like contacts or something where it's like not even noticeable. And then, I do think eventually Neuralink type technology where it's just plugged right in and there is no interface. It's a chip. I mean, they're already doing that with like monkeys, and they're doing it. Did you see the one guy who like I think he was paralyzed or something? They put a chip in his brain
Yeah.
and he can walk now. Like shit like that. It's already getting like closer than I would have guessed I would ever see. 10 years ago.
Do you think everyone would be like in their individual little world, or do you think it'd be like a collective sort of like online and in person like combination?
Now, yeah, that's the question right there, I think, because it depends. Because so if it's like AR, like remember like the Pokemon Go thing where like everyone was like, "Oh, this is awesome! It's the first time in 5 years that the kids are actually going back outside ever since these phones came out." And it was like that was like AR, and that was cool, and it was like an interactive. That was probably like one of the best social apps for kids that we've probably seen. That's the AR, but now the VR is like, I mean, I've got the VR goggles. We would play it when I lived with my buddies. You throw it on, like you're in the same room with someone, but they're not in the same room. Like you could have 5 people sitting next to each other physically on the couch and not be talking, not even realize each other are there because they're just like immersed in this VR world. I feel like that's the one that's going to be like the most common.
Yeah,
It's not.
that's
It's going
kind
to
of
be
what
the opposite.
yeah.
It's going to be a bunch of people who live right next to each other, don't know each other, never seen each other. They've just been immersed in like some whether it's like video game or some virtual reality kind of universe or whatever, or maybe even for work. I mean, people are going to use them for work. There's going to be good use cases for like business and stuff like that. I could see, so that'll probably be pretty common too.
Yeah. I think that's about a good spot to wrap us up on.
All right, yep, let's call it there. I did like this debate roulette. Let's do this.
That was pretty cool, and I mean, it's seemingly like we can have like a ton of different ones, but they kind of all circle back a little bit in a certain way. But very good, I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, we can work on the prompts too to see like we can kind of mess with like the types of topics they'll come up with and stuff, and see if we can keep them like switching up and everything. But all right,
Thanks for tuning in, everyone.
have a nice time.